I talked about this on Thursday a bit, but I have to talk about this a little bit more because the European car industry expresses vehement criticism because e-car exports to the UK are set to be significantly more expensive soon. And the reason is the battery strategy of the EU. But since Britain left the EU, it's not often that German car manufacturers rush to the location's aid. However, the clause in the trade agreement concluded after Brexit is now leading to an unusual alliance. The German Association of the Automotive Industry, the VDA, together with British manufacturers and the government in London, is pushing for the rules of origin for electric vehicles to be changed. That means that the continental European car manufacturers are allied with the British government against the EU Commission. In a letter published on Tuesday and available to German newspapers, the Association of European Car Manufacturers is asking the Brussels authorities to postpone the new rules of origin for electric cars by 3 years. Those manufacturers are nervous because the rules should apply from January 2024. Then import duties of 10% will be due on e-cars that do not come at least 45% of their value from the EU or Great Britain. And import duties would be imposed on both sides of the English Channel. Since significantly more vehicles are exported from the EU to Great Britain than vice versa, this regulation primarily affects manufacturers from countries like Germany, France, Italy, and Spain, and the UK, with 57% of their exports going to the EU. The potential damage to the European economy would be significant, was said by ASEA boss Sigrid de Vries in this letter. The rules of origin are unfulfillable, the introduction in the short term counterproductive. The tariffs in the most important sales market for European manufacturers would reduce the sales figures for e-cars. The association surveyed 10 EU companies, which account for 70% of e-car exports to Great Britain. According to their own estimates, European manufacturers would have to pay British import duties of 4.3 billion euros in the 3 years from 2024 to 26. And this would mean that around 480,000 fewer electric cars would be produced in the EU during this period. The tariffs would be, as they say, an unnecessary burden for EU companies at a time of crucial upheaval in the industry. The British government has been calling for an extension of the deadline for a long time in order to avoid new burdens on its industry. The rules after Brexit were agreed in the free trade agreement between Great Britain and the EU. During the transition period until the end of 2023, manufacturers should set up their own battery infrastructure in Europe, but they just didn't. And ASEA is now complaining that the deadline is too short to restructure the global battery supply chain. The energy crisis has also made it difficult to invest in domestic battery factories. Most batteries continue to come from China, which is why only a tenth of European e-car exports would currently meet the minimum quota of 45% of European origin. The Commission heard the concerns at a meeting with industry representatives in early May and asked for more facts. As a result, the German Automobile Association VDA increased the pressure and warned of the consequences for the German automobile industry. And now comes the ASEA, but where are the more facts they asked for? The association emphasized that they did not fundamentally question the new rules of origin. They only want a temporary extension of the transition period. In Brussels, it is now expected that the Commission will grant the extension. Otherwise, from the point of view of the industry, there would only be one winner, and that is China. And De Vries points out that Chinese manufacturers' share of the British electric market rose from 2% to 32% between 2019 and 22, even though the Chinese already have to pay a 10% tariff. And should the European manufacturers now have to pay the same tariff, they would lose further market share, according to the association. But seriously, to put the crisis in front that they didn't do their homework is a joke. And this time I'm hitting especially on the German car makers here. They have just not done their job, and that we will see if the Commission will do what everyone is expecting now, to give the extension, and the British government will do the same. But they finally have to do their homework. It is absolutely clear, and in a lot of places people are working on to get away from this dependency on China. I mean, we saw what happened with the dependency on Russia. Well, we here now got away from that, and there's no dependency on Russian gas anymore. The EU could cope with that mainly. But the same applies to China. And that's why there is a new chip factory coming, an American chip factory coming to Germany, for example, with some subsidies from the German government. And we get a new battery research facility here in my hometown. But they have to do more. And the car makers, especially, that are building those cars that need the batteries, have to work on that to get more domestic production. Otherwise, they will be so blackmailable by China in the future. You have to learn from the past, and they finally have to learn from the past. But that was a bit more, it was, of course, Brexit, but a bit more a little diversion to the continent. But if you want to know more about what's going on with Brexit and the UK, there's another video right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.